What retailers must do today to meet the consumer expectations of tomorrow. My name is Allison Enright, and I'm editor of Internet Retailer Magazine. I will be setting the stage for today's webinar and moderating the Q&A. Today's webinar will dig into consumers' changing shopping patterns and the innovations retailers are coming up with to empower consumers to co-design their shopping experiences across channels, devices, and locations. Our speakers today are Adam Silverman, Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, Inc. Adam covers e-commerce strategy and e-commerce technology, among other topics, and prior to joining Forrester had years of experience as an e-commerce executive at retailers including Alibris, Musician's Friend, and Wet Seal. Our second speaker today is Jason Wallace, Chief Technology Officer at e-commerce platform provider Mozu. Mozu is the sponsor of today's webinar. Jason and his team are responsible for building Mozu's platform architecture to meet the needs of Mozu retailer clients. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. You can ask a question, or if you have any concerns, you need any concerns addressed, by typing in a question into the chat panel on the right side of your screen. Everyone will receive instructions on how to receive a replay of this presentation in the next 48 to 72 hours. So let's get started. No more channels. A sale is a sale no matter where it happens. It's a pretty simple concept to understand, but the sentiment has been years in the making. The conversation has shifted from one that separated store performance and operations from online performance and operations, and more recently, mobile performance and operations, to one that puts it all in one bucket, and the technology that enables a single view has evolved along with retailers' point of view. But it wasn't retailers or technology vendors that made this sentiment come alive. It really was consumers who forced retailers' hands. These are just some basic data points on the service levels of retail chains and how they are accommodating consumers' so-called single-channel shopping needs. This is data culled from our Top 500 guide based on 2013 availability. So 79% of websites for retail chains offer maps to show consumers how to get to the store. 53% have let consumers return products bought online to stores, and 28% offer store pickup of web orders. Of course, all these statistics are tracking upward. But more than half of purchases consumers make in-store are influenced by the web, and that's only going to accelerate. So no, you got to X out the no. Consumers don't want to hear the word no, or we can't do that here. That's one surefire way to bankruptcy these days. Consumers browse and shop online, on mobile, and in stores interchangeably, and they are demanding better, more unified shopping experiences, and for one channel to feed into the other. Consumers want to feel enabled, and that retailers are enabling them to have the exact shopping journey they want, when they want them, and how they want them. Our speakers today will elaborate on how retailers are using technology to do this. With that, I just want to mention again, if you have any questions, you want to submit a question to any of our speakers, you can do that in the panel on the right of your screen. And with that, I will hand it over to Adam of Forrester Research.
Thank you, Allison. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Adam Silverman, Principal Analyst at Forrester. And as Allison mentioned, I cover commerce technology. But actually I've been in the role of Forrester here just for a couple of years. Most of my career has been spent running digital businesses and e-commerce for the companies that she mentioned. So I'll be adding the Forrester perspective with our data, as well as adding my own perspective as a retailer as well. Oh, my apologies. So this is the agenda that we'll review today. We'll first discuss the emergence of the connected customer, and I have some data to share with you there. We'll then discuss the technology that's powering retail today and in the future. And then a sort of a summary, we'll tie that into some recommendations in terms of how you should move forward with some of these digital transformations. One of my favorite quotes, this was from last year, and gosh, I think you could say this quote almost every day. You can almost wake up and say this every day. The pace of change is accelerating faster than anticipated a year ago. I was part of the original .com rise in fall. I thought that was fairly dramatic. Things are much more challenging today. Not only are customer expectations are higher, but we have also legacy systems that have been in place that in many cases need to be reconfigured and implemented in order to meet those rising expectations of customers. And so how we sort of can see that is, if you look at how customers are using digital devices, here's tablet usage You can see in the top right, those circles represent the percentage of time they're using their device in those locations, and the top right is at home. And so mainly the tablet is an at-home device. You do use it while traveling, hopefully not, you could use it for navigation, but it's mainly used for entertainment. But you can see it's mainly an at-home device, sort of a PC replacement. But when you look at the same graphic with mobile, you can see a lot of large circles across, not only inside the home while you're commuting and then outside of the home. And in fact, if you look at the bottom left, you can see in stores is at 66%. Right at the top there in terms of high usage of those mobile phones in stores. So clearly mobile devices are allowing customers to be more empowered. And we can see that here. In the past, technology was really owned by the enterprise, by the retailer. Information, price, and even where the product is located and how you can access that. All of that information was really owned by the enterprise. But technology is shifting that over to the customer. The fact that they have a mobile device and they can access that information means that they're now in control. They have access to all of this information, and they're really the ones that are empowered. And this transformation is really causing quite a stir within retail. And it's, this is, I wouldn't say anything new. This has been happening for a few years. But you'll see in some of the data that I have that, how surprising it is that retail in general is still behind in terms of meeting those customer expectations. And, one of the expectations, as Allison mentioned, was that customers really don't care about channels. I mean, we buy and we don't necessarily think about how we want to purchase or what channel we most explicitly want to purchase a product in. We just think about the brand that we want to interact with, the product we're looking for, and we find the most convenient source for making that purchase. So where the transaction occurs is irrelevant, and we know that e-commerce is roughly 9% of overall sales, it depends on your vertical, but overall Forrester, our data shows it's at 9% in terms of our forecast view. But it's the influence of digital on physical sales that's the most important. So here's a stat from, again, our forecast. 52% of sales paid for in a store are influenced online. So again, the role of digital is not necessarily about having, being that source of that transaction. Mobile and tablets and digital in general is really most powerful when it's influencing sales in other locations. And again, that's what's sort of creating this tension, because traditionally these devices, these methods for buying were channels and silos within organizations, and those need to be broken down. So more proof here. When we ask customers in terms of their expectations when it comes to channel integration, the numbers are quite high. So 73% of customers expect to click and collect. And that is basically just a phrase meaning that they can buy online and they can pick up in store. So they expect that kind of integration. 86% expect to return online orders in the store. And I was shocked by, Allison, your comments early on from your data. 53% of retail chains allow this. So you can see right there, that's the tension we're talking about. Only roughly half allow customers to return products that were bought online into the store, but most customers actually expect it. And then finally, one of the biggest numbers is that customers expect to view the in-store inventory of products online. And there's a real risk if you don't do that. So here's what we ask customers: what if your retailer of choice did not have, didn't expose the enterprise inventory online? A quarter of those customers won't even go to the store and buy. You might have the product in stock, but a quarter of those customers are just going to stay at home or buy somewhere else because you're not exposing that inventory. So there's real risk by not exposing, at the very least, enterprise inventory visibility. And also, when you expose that inventory, you're actually changing, again, the expectations of customers. The dynamic changes quite significantly. So here's a personal example I'll give you. These are stroller wheels. I just had my second child 9 months ago, and so we bought this stroller used on Craigslist, and it's one of those jogging strollers. You can attach it to your bicycle as well. These are the kind of strolling wheels that that are attachments to the stroller. And I was near my local sporting goods store, and I knew they had this brand in stock, or I should say they've carried this brand before, and so I went in and asking for these wheels, and they weren't on the shelf. I asked the associate to go into the back to check to see if they're in the back room, and she could not find them. So, okay, my expectation was, okay, you're out of stock. I'll accept that. No big deal. But then I realized I had the retailer's app installed, and so I can see the inventory. So things change quite rapidly. That conversation was interesting. After I showed him this, before I was saying, okay, you're out of stock. I'll try again later. But it really changed. Now I know you have the product in stock. Please find it. And in this particular example, this retailer actually struggled to understand exactly what to do. I don't think they were actually expecting a customer to be empowered and to have access to that inventory. And eventually they did find the wheels, and I got them. But it was sort of a simple, eye-opening example. And you know, maybe the bad news is a lot of these examples exist. You might have had your own experience working with retailers in regards to accessing information on your mobile device. So it's clear we're still in the early days. Even though we've been discussing this for many years, we're still early in terms of this digital transformation. And then when we think about associates, 39% of customers are more likely to shop or interact with those sales associates who are equipped with mobile devices. If you work in luxury, that number goes to 66%. So there's a real need for associates to have digital devices as well as customers. And it's not just simply because it's a good brand presentation, meaning that they think highly of your brand because your associates have digital devices. It's because the customers are now, have high expectations of associates in terms of what the information they provide, and digital devices allows associates to meet those customer expectations. So now we're digging in again a little bit tighter into how customers use their digital devices, mobile phones. Here's a stat for using mobile phones in store. 23% of customers will price check in aisle on their mobile phone. This is over a 3-month period, so a pretty tight time window. But when you expand it out, you ask, okay, what did you do after you checked prices in aisle? 41% ended up buying at another retailer, and that's either online or in the other retailer's store. So if you do the math, 23% times 41%, basically you're getting 9% of U.S. customers are showrooming, which is, my definition of, using your mobile phone in the store and then buying elsewhere. So the good news is half of the sales are still occurring in the store, but there's a massive opportunity for retailers to embrace this behavior. We cannot force customers not to do this. This is what we do. So it's a matter of embracing it, and in my opinion, training your sales associates to understand these triggers, whether it's physically looking at customers who are price checking or even with in-store analytics, to be able to take that input and then do something with it, which should be addressing the customer, helping them price match, or even just find the item. If we look at that 23% of customers who price check, if you look at it across all the demographics, no surprise that your younger demographics are more likely to use their mobile phone in aisle to check prices. And we talked about this earlier. The gap between customers' omnichannel desires and retailers' capabilities are further apart than ever. Allison and I just sort of shared the same data point from a customer and a retailer perspective. Here's some other data for you, and then we'll dig into some of the case studies. So 74% of businesses think they have a digital strategy, whereas only 34% of executives think their firm has the right strategy, and only 16% of those executives believe their firm has the skills and resources necessary to deliver on that strategy. So clearly, we're just, from a retailer perspective, we know that what customers want. We know technology has been infused in the store and online. It's infused in what they do every day. As retailers, we're not meeting their expectations. So let's talk about some of the technologies that is powering retail today and then also in the future. And I'll change the approach here, a little less data, more on case studies here. So there's 8 specific examples I'd like to review. So those rock star retailers are providing guidance, focusing on engagement, driving emotion in the store. They're trying to make the store more of an emotional place, creating those immersive experiences, connecting through social, improving service, driving personalization, and then becoming more analytical. And so I'll give you case studies here. So the store provides guidance. This is not what Macy's looks like. This is a tour guide, and recently Macy's announced that they will be enabling all their associates with digital devices so that they can be tour guides. So this notion of associate enablement is very, very popular within the retail community today. I think customers do expect to have enabled associates. We saw some of that data earlier in terms of that they're more likely to shop with digitally enabled associates. The challenge is that we, as the retail organizations, sometimes just give devices to associates and don't think about the training or associate adoption. So since we're talking about changing customer behavior, people behavior, which is the associate behavior in terms of how they use this device, sometimes the adoption can be a little bit low. So we're still in this early phase of figuring out what the right use case is for associate devices, but it truly is and will be a differentiator in the future. So the next slide is the store becomes theater. Here we go. It was a little late to click there. So this is an example of a retailer, Rebecca Minkoff, which is a luxury retailer, mainly apparel. And they've implemented technology not just in the front of the store, as you can see here, where you can interact and sort of build a shopping cart, but they've actually put the technology in the dressing room. And so as you enter the dressing room senses your products that you've brought in through RFID, and as you try on products, if you need a different size, the mirror actually is interactive, and it's not this interactive mirror that shows what a product on the web looks like on you. It's actually an interactive mirror that allows you to call an associate to help you find another size. So you can say, this is too small, please pick out a larger one, and the associate will bring you that product. So I think it's a great use case of putting that technology in the dressing room. It's almost like the shopping cart of a website. It's where you're most likely to convert, and technology in the dressing room makes it more convenient for her. And it also allows her to try on more apparel, which we can all imagine will drive up conversion rate and overall average order size. So the technology is certainly entering the store from a theatrical perspective, but very much going to the dressing room to drive conversion. 3, the store becomes emotional. This is an example of the Burberry flagship in England, in London. And it's hard sometimes to think about the ROI because they obviously invested a lot of money in this digital signage. But the real takeaway here is the convergence of content and commerce. And you see this theme with e-commerce applications and platforms, and that customers are expecting more of an engaging and emotional experience. And this convergence of content and commerce is happening not only online but also in the store as well. So in this case, you can take an RFID-enabled product, put it on the display, and the digital signage that's nearby, the digital screen will actually change and give you those features and benefits. So yes, it's a branding component as well, but it helps the customer engage more in the store. It also helps associates, too, understand more about the products. We're seeing more of this sort of emotional connection within the store occur, and you can see this here again in this Burberry example. This is the next one is a new example that that I've included. This is a store that is offering home, well, obviously you're seeing shower heads here, but it's kitchen appliances. And what they do is rather than just simply set up this information, or sorry, these devices and appliances in the store, they plug everything in. And so you can actually take a shower there and try out the different shower heads. So to me, that is an example of an immersive experience. Is there a lot of technology in this example? No, but if you think about the differentiating experience, you wouldn't expect a retailer to offer this kind of capability. And if you were to wire up all of your stoves with gas and allow them to be operational, you could actually even offer cooking classes and additional services. I just think it's a great example of thinking beyond the product and thinking about the customer and how they will most likely engage with the product. The store becoming social. This is an example of Nordstrom and Pinterest. Nordstrom's placing the Pinterest pins on the products. That's giving authenticity to the products in the store. It's also making this offline-online connection, and again, providing associates with the ability to understand those items that are hot sellers or at least popular products on Pinterest. So the integration between social and the physical store is also occurring as well. 6, this is an example of driving service, and the reality is this is also an example of store fulfillment. So one of the most popular areas of omni-channel initiatives are around omni-channel fulfillment or fulfilling products from any location. And so in the case of store fulfillment, Best Buy, by fulfilling those products from the store, are able to offer and promise delivery of those products 2 full days quicker than before. So store fulfillment, which is where you buy online and at store, rather than shipped from the distribution center, it's actually being shipped from a local store. That actually has lots of benefits to the customer. There's also benefits to the retailer as well. The opportunity to sell through items that are being marked down or that are at risk of being marked down before they actually have to take those markdowns. You can be more agile with your inventory in your enterprise. So 2 more here. The store becomes personal. This is an emerging area. This is an example of B&Q, which is a UK-based sort of a home improvement retailer, and they're actually testing variable price tags on the aisle. And so depending upon who's in the aisle, they will personalize the price for you in that aisle. So that might seem a little bit futuristic, and I think that the technology is here, and the risk is obviously if the person next to you is getting a lower price, you obviously want to shop with that person. But what's interesting is the use of electronic shelf labels and more dynamic pricing in store. This will be commonplace in the next few years. Again, the technology lives today, but it's just not quite at the high end of the priority list for retailers. But certainly within the next 3 years, you'll see more of this occur. Not only will it reinforce your brand position if you have a low price position, but it also saves labor with changing prices as well and changing those shelf tags. And then finally, the store becoming analytical. This is a heat map of a store. Now, you could make the case that the data is simply showing you where the elevators are and the bathrooms are. It doesn't quite add that much insight. And that's, I would say, the general sort of my perspective on where the in-store analytics industry is today. But this will be changing. The vendors and retailers will soon learn to turn this data into insight. We have to answer questions such as where does the data go and whose responsibility is it to actually process this? How does it get merged with online data and overall lifetime value of the customer? What does it mean? And then what action can you take in real time? How does this help an associate in the aisle understand behavior of a customer so that they can improve that conversion rate at that moment in real time? But certainly the cornerstone of retail in the future in terms of physical stores will be analytics, just like we see in e-commerce. Okay, so wrapping up, let's go through some recommendations here. Just 3 quick slides, and then we'll turn it over to Jason. Okay, so thinking about the recommendations, the first area is we need to expose inventory visibility or create inventory visibility. So customers are pre-shopping at home and demand to see inventory in all locations. Endless aisle, click and collect requires it too. This is the cornerstone of omni-channel fulfillments, right? We need to have inventory visibility across the enterprise in order to enable many of these experiences. 2 is align your organization around the customer. We mentioned this earlier, channels are dead, at least they're dead to the customer. Internally, you can still have those channels as long as they're not getting in the way of you organizing and creating experiences that are customer-centric. So partner with your e-com and store teams to meet customer expectations across channels. Enable mobile experiences for customers and associates. It's clear now, you probably already know this through your own research, mobile usage is growing. Mobile usage in store is growing. I gave you some of those stats today. So empower those digital experiences for customers and enable your associates. Give them the tools that they need in order to create a differentiated experience in the store. Otherwise, they can just simply shop at home on their e-commerce on their website. So you want to make that store more engaging, and empowering the associates with mobile devices is helpful. Prepare for data-driven retail, both online and in store. So a huge amount of data will be available to retailers in the near future. build a plan today to capture it, analyze, and act upon this insight. This was a nod towards an analytics slide. Just think about all of that shopping behavior that we're just not capturing. Imagine if you ran an e-commerce business without analytics. You really wouldn't have the advantages of A/B testing, multivariate testing, and some rich personalization. That will be coming to the store, so prepare for that data deluge. And then finally, infuse agility into your organization. So test and learn now. Beacons, as an example, they're easy to pilot. So those that test now will be the masters tomorrow. I've written and researched quite a bit about beacons, and I think the business case is a little bit nebulous right now. Certainly, giving offers is not an aisle through beacons is not the only way to approach that technology and using location, but it's really important to start to test today and figure out what those use cases are that meet your customer expectations. So with that, I want to say thank you. Here's my contact information. And now I'll introduce Jason Wallace, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Mozu. Jason, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Thank you for that detailed overview kind of what we're all feeling and we know is the change that's going on in industry. I want to focus now on 5 very specific strategies from a technology standpoint that modern retailers can execute to try to capture mind share and market share in the current climate. When you think about what we hear from a lot of folks is that they're struggling to deal with, like, perhaps I've made large technology investments, and those investments weren't focused on solving the problems of today's challenges. And what happens is consumers are more often than not kind of voting with their feet, and they have pretty high expectations for what experiences a retailer will deliver. And so you really have a couple of choices. You can drown in that change, or you can ride that wave. And in a world where many retailers are not meeting expectations for those experiences, by providing a delightful experience, you'll really be ahead of the game from that standpoint. In terms of what's driving the shift, and Adam, you touched on this as well. I've been around commerce a long time, and back in the in the early days, it was really about the blocking and tackling the basics of how do I get a product catalog online and manage pricing and accept payment and deal with just browser standards. And the issues we had to deal with then that were so challenging are almost laughable compared to the challenges that we face today in the modern world. And so really, oddly enough, and I don't think we realized it at the time, it was the rise of the modern smartphone platform in 2007 that triggered this wave. And at that point, we were all, as consumers, kind of amazed by this, these small computing devices we had in our hand. And the form factor issue became pretty topic on the forefront of retailers' mind on how do I provide experiences to deal with that form factor. But what we didn't really account for was how it was going to just dramatically change behavior and push what became a multi-channel, shopping challenge to an omni-channel challenge. And I have to agree that the channel is dead. I really think about it as the unchannel from a consumer standpoint. There's no real acknowledgement that there is a difference in how I should engage with a brand on a device, regardless of device, or in a store, or in no matter what context. I really am more omni-connected. I'm constantly connected as a consumer, and I expect the retailer to be able to deal with and provide a very consistent and delightful experience in that model. In terms of strategies, there's real five strategies that we see as key steps to take, and some of these have to do with how to operationalize a set of technologies when you have many different experiences to provide. So responsive design is an example of that, and we'll go into that. Single sourcing content, leveraging the technology that consumers are carrying as a way to deliver even more personalized experiences. I think perhaps one of the most important things, and you touched on this as well, is the embracing agility and innovation. In times of great change, if you stand still, you're just going to get left behind. So it's really important as an organization to be willing and able to bring that innovation into the culture. And then empowering sales associates. Responsive design, which I think everybody here is relatively familiar with, is the concept that you can provide a single code base for a front end of an e-commerce experience, and that code base can respond to the form factor in front of it and provide a tailored experience. It's more important than ever because of the dramatic shift in sales coming from mobile devices. It was just browsing and kind of shopping, and then really in the last 12 to 18 months there's been a pretty dramatic shift in the number of transactions that are being completed on a mobile device, not just start the transaction on a mobile device and finish on a desktop, but more and more we're getting comfortable to interacting in the mobile world. So the challenge of maintaining multiple code bases or maintaining different sites or having a transcoder that sits on top of a desktop site to build and optimize mobile experience, it just doesn't work anymore because of the difficulty in operationalizing that. I know when I was in industry, I saw repeatedly we would see a technology we wanted to bring in to our environment, and we'd estimate the investments and the amount of time and the staff it was going to take. We'd stand up the technology, and more often than not, it underwhelmed us because the cost of operationalizing it was so much greater than what we anticipated. So we just couldn't staff it to feed the data in to make the tools work correctly. So a key, anywhere you can find technologies that enable, you know, as a retailer, to manage and operationalize them without having to do redundant maintenance or cumbersome maintenance, it's really a key area to focus in on because customers expect that consistency. You know, I think gone are the days where, you know, you can really afford to have a mobile site experience that just doesn't have the same features and data available to a desktop experience, and even more is inconsistent with your in-store experiences. So responsive design is a key part of that strategy. Another element that's related to that is single sourcing content, and this can be content that comes from external sources or internally generated content. And things that typically have not been considered content, elements of data, now are more commonly accepted as content. I think you touched on inventory, which is a key piece of content that needs to be available really on any device at any point in time, because consumers make decisions about where they're going to buy based on that before you even get a chance to interact with them face-to-face or in-store. Customer data, transaction history, everything that's required to provide really robust in-store and online experiences, single sourcing that content as much as possible, because if you can't, even if you can provide a consistent experience by not single sourcing, the data maintenance and the cost of operationalizing those experiences will become such a burden that it won't be manageable in the long term. So having a unified, centrally managed product catalog, digital assets, unstructured content is an absolutely critical key to the strategy. I would take it even further and say optimizing the workflows around digital assets, for example. If you have a cumbersome manual workflow where you've got to generate different sizes of media for different form factors, and the form factors are constantly changing, and you have to go back and rerun these manual workflows, that's just an operational nightmare. So finding a mechanism to single source that and reduce those workflows is absolutely critical. Hyper-personalized experiences. This is really the area that I think retailers have the opportunity to stand out. And I touched on it a little bit earlier. Because consumer expectations are so high, because they're being driven by the technology that consumers are familiar with, they use every day, and retailers, more often than not, are not participating in that ecosystem effectively, that just leveraging technology that's available today and delivering delightful experiences with technology would be a huge distinguishing factor versus other competitors in the same space. I think whether it's location technology or just being able to connect the dots transactionally and know when someone's online, have visibility into in-store purchases and the activity that's happened on other channels, and being able to provide either promotions or reviews, etc. There's just a myriad of technologies that are available. The challenge is how to bring all that to bear so that you can deliver just delightful experiences and not these sort of unsatisfactory experiences that are very generic. Embracing agility and innovation. I touched on this. I think this is probably the key, sort of the key thing to take away. There's two cycles around agility. There's what I call a virtuous cycle. and there's a vicious cycle. And the virtuous cycle is described by you have an organization that's willing to try new things. That willingness to try new things and experiment and succeed or fail quickly with those experiments breeds success. And that success makes organizations more willing to try new things and succeed or fail quickly, and they move forward. That's the virtuous cycle. That's the cycle everybody wants to be in. More often than not, what retailers find is they're stuck somewhere in the vicious cycle, which is a fear of innovation, which means that if you don't innovate, you're going to fall behind. So you make a big bet and fail late, which leads to further fear of innovation, which makes you fall further behind. And so the key is, how can I leverage technologies that are going to be empowering once I get the organization embracing innovation to support that innovation? And SaaS, a SaaS platform is a fantastic mechanism for delivering innovation, primarily because of the time-to-market concerns. So we really favor SaaS technologies across the board because they can deliver enhancements more quickly than the typical 2 to 3 year product development cycle, and then the lag it takes to purchase a set of licensed technology, install it, do the upgrades and migrations, et cetera. You're several years behind the times when you're stuck in that model. So a modern technology stack for all of your business critical applications with a strong SaaS backbone and very open really is the core of providing that agility for all the new form factors that we don't even know are coming yet as this consumer change continues. It's not stopping. It's happened, and it's continuing to happen as technology is put in the hands of consumers. And lastly is the empowering associates key sort of technology strategy. And I like your story, Adam, about the stroller wheels and how you had visibility of the inventory that the store associate didn't have. And the nice thing about that is you at least had the information and could sort of save the sale on behalf of the retailer, but turn the tables and just assume for a second that the associate had access to that same information. And instead of being not as knowledgeable as you, they were actually more knowledgeable than you about what they had. That would be a much more delightful experience. I think we've probably all experienced that moment where you're face-to-face with an associate and you might be empowered with more information than they are, and that's a pretty deflating shopping experience. Study upon study upon study has demonstrated that informed sales associates are much more productive and engaging, and consumers are more willing to buy from informed sales associates. Consumers have access to mobile technology. They have access to everything right there. They expect associates to have that exact same technology, and that's either used for product discovery and shopping and inventory visibility, or actually conducting a transaction if you're line busting right there and you can empower someone to conduct a transaction right there in the store and move someone through the purchase process. So that's actually an exceptionally critical piece of a sound technology strategy. Shifting gears a little bit and how we at Mozu have kind of sought to address these problems and provide a modern platform that handles these modern challenges. Really, we started with that strong SaaS backbone, just knowing that times of innovation, required us to be in a position where we could deliver new features and enhancements, out to retailers as fast as consumers are kind of bringing them to the forefront of everybody's mind. We built all of that also on top of an exceptionally open API. So there's really a few components to the platform. There's a set of developer tools, there's a business user tool environment, and then there's storefront and in-store kind of experiences and the technology that drives that. From a developer standpoint, a core tenet of the Mozu stack is not only do we need organizations to embrace innovation, we want to empower developers to provide that innovative experience. So we have a very unlimited and open environment where you can have as many sandbox environments and to experiment and play with. You can work in a lot of different technologies. We've open sourced SDKs for really a lot of the big mobile and server platforms, and enable you to build a native mobile desktop or in-store experiences right there through that tool set. The next tool is the business user tools, which are obviously integrated through that same API and that same SaaS backbone. And keyed around strong usability so that operationalizing these new experiences is something you can actually achieve. So, a single sourcing catalog information, single sourcing content, having one place for customer transaction, segmentation data to be visible, inventory data is visible in Mozu, fed from inventory management systems throughout the enterprise so that they have real-time updates to that system so that shoppers have visibility into that. Strong reporting backbone and obviously a whole location platform so consumers can find the nearest locations and do inventory searches, et cetera. The last part of that is that the customer experience tools which really allow a retailer to serve up those experiences directly out of this single open SaaS backbone to wherever the customers might be. I touched on a lot of the key tenets here, and can't stress enough that if you don't have a tool set built around the kind of modern problems that you're facing, it's going to be a real challenge to turn a kind of a Franken app bolted together infrastructure into something that can deliver these modern experiences. You have to have the ability to streamline and centrally manage content, catalog data, customer data, to be able to create new site experiences without having to go to an internal IT organization. And the SaaS automation that runs the entire platform is a key enabler of that. If you want to build a branded or a niche sort of site experience, leverage a lot of the content investments you've already made, there's no need to kind of engage IT staff for that. You can do a lot of that directly in the workbench. Or if you want to build a highly customized experience and engage developers to integrate that into the rest of your environment. The API-first architecture has kind of future-proofed us against a lot of the things that we can't see coming. I think Mozu's had the benefit of being born in the time of this great change. So it really is very much informed by the forces that are kind of at play in the consumer environment today. And the pricing model, we don't believe in rev share, so we've built on a very predictable pricing model that's based on usage. Retailers' revenue is retailers' revenue. We don't think that's, it's necessarily a fair model for us to charge on % of revenue, so that's not anything we go near. And a strong heritage of SaaS experience. Mozu is actually part of the Volusion, which has been around for 15 years and has a very strong pedigree in SaaS commerce, powered about $17 billion in commerce over that span of time. So a long legacy of delivering commerce via SaaS here. And if I'd invite anyone that is interested in kind of learning more about how Mozu can empower the commerce experiences that are needed today to come visit us at mozu.com, request a consultation. We can kind of give a customized demo and give you kind of a sense of what the experience would be like delivering, delightful shopping experiences to your consumers through this platform. And with that, Allison, I'll turn it back over to you for any wrap-up and Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Jason, Adam, thank you for the presentations. I thought those were really great. We kind of got the trends and analysis side, and then we got the technology back end of the technology requirements there, too. I'd just like to remind everyone on the call, we're going to do a few minutes of Q&A here. There is a questions slot on your GoToWebinar panel there on the right side of your screen. So if you have any questions for either Adam or Jason, you can go ahead and type those in, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. We did have a few come in during the presentation, so I might as well just jump in with those. Let's see, which one? Let's start with a good one here. Adam, this question is for you. What are the biggest barriers to achieving omni-channel success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's a few really important things that I've seen surface a bunch of times. we've talked about the technology piece, and I'm going to start with this, and it's not really the most important, but I will just sort of start here because we have been talking about exposing that inventory visibility across all of your channels. So you need to know where the products are, relatively accurately. I mean, there's certain degrees of accuracy needed for certain types of campaigns. So if you're doing store pickup, you need to know that product's in that store, where if you're doing store fulfillment, if a store doesn't have it, they can shuttle that order to another store. So that maybe is a little less, needs less accuracy. But regardless, you need to certainly expose that, that inventory. But I said that's probably the bottom of the third. But so let's start with, I think, the two most important ones. One is making sure that the organization is aligned around the customer. For some organizations, they're born digital. They don't need necessarily to have, a single P&L as an example. But you do see, certainly in the press, and you see from a lot of larger retailers, they're realigning their organization around the customer. They're abolishing channels. They're merging groups together. And in fact, in some cases, like the Gap, they're organizing around chief, experience, a CX role, customer experience role, versus, let's say, a marketing role. So you're seeing slight differences in terms of the models that are being applied. But I would also add that when you go that route, that you make sure that you focus on agility as well. So your org structure today and the leaders that you have in place today might not be what's required in a few years. So just be thinking about that org structure, making sure that your incentives and everyone's aligned around the customer, and that's going to be very important. So the final thing, again, I would put this number 2 in terms of priorities, would be making sure that when you deploy these technologies, that you're thinking about use cases that drive convenience or some sort of customer value. We talked a lot of, certainly in my section, there's a lot of different technologies and a lot of different case studies, some more successful than others. When it fails because retailers deploy the technology simply to deploy the technology, almost like they're looking for a problem. In many cases, especially around the associate, the prevailing winds say that you should give the associate everything and have them be able to pick and choose the information that they have access to. In my experience, I don't know that that's actually the best way to approach it. I think that's, again, assuming the associate has endless hours and can digest, RFM scores, for instance, if you were to feed that in. I think that it's really important to think about the use cases, not only from the customer perspective, but from the associate perspective, and solve for those specific pain points. Again, I've written about beacons, and I call it beacon fever, right? Because everyone's rushing to deploy beacons and give offers in aisle, but the reality is that customers only want 1 or 2 notifications within a shopping session within a store, right? Within each visit. So you can see that use case gets whittled down pretty quickly to not be as scalable. And Jason was mentioning that earlier in terms of his experience. Sometimes as you roll these deployments out and you actually have to deal with management of devices, it gets kind of expensive. So follow the leaders that focus on specific use cases. Walgreens would be one of them around filling prescriptions, as an example, where they just created an app that is designed to do that. And so they're solving a pain point that's measurable in terms of the improvement, and I think that's going to be really important. It just requires you to think a little bit versus just deploy the technology.
Great. Yeah, we actually have a related question, kind of tangential, right, to that about the use cases. And the question is, we don't have a lot of context on what store or how it's working here, but the question is, in our department store, we have iPads in the fitting rooms. Our customers have abandoned the technology in favor of physically interacting with our associates.
Exactly.
Do you have any insights on how we can re-engage the customer through technology? They rolled it out. They put it out maybe too soon or not. How do you get them back?
Well, I think this is where you have to be. This is the agility piece. Bravo for putting them in the fitting rooms. I think that's the right place. I don't know the details, so I don't know what is being offered. I've seen examples where you can choose the music or do something that's kind of a nice-to-have functionality. But the reality is when you're in the dressing room, we've all been there before. You're trying, and I've been there a lot when I always pick the size that's too small because I forget that I've gained 20 pounds or something like that. So I always need help finding a new size. Like it's never, I have to get dressed again. I have to deal with these products that I brought in, and I have to go and walk the floor and find products again and bring them back. If I would wager that making that pain point, digitizing that pain point, and using technology to streamline that would be, I think, helpful. So where you simply select the sizes that you want and somebody brings it. Now that also means that you have to assign labor to the dressing rooms, right, in a way that you might not have done before in the past. And so that's where you have to think about the ROI. But I think it's complex, but it's a matter of really focusing on those pain points. And maybe if the person that asked that question would, if they have the opportunity to write in and give more details, that would be interesting to hear what they're doing today, why it's not working.
Well, and Adam, just to add on a little bit to that, I think if kind of the scenario that the technology is intended to enable is it's an environment where it's high touch, very service oriented, I think consumers would rather deal with a knowledgeable, friendly associate, in a lot of scenarios, rather than just deal with a piece of glass, unless it's a very novelty-driven, engaging, gadgety experience. So in some cases, just empowering an associate, leaving them in the mix, but giving them a way to keep them involved, but bring technology in is a good answer. And I think it's not really related to this, but kind of a scenario that stuck out in my mind of a company that's leveraged technology without abandoning that customer service is, oddly enough, it's Starbucks. And if you think back to what Starbucks was going through a decade or more ago when they kind of really hit their growth slump, and they came back and put a tremendous focus on customer experience, and they said, really, we win or lose in the 3 feet between the barista and the customer as they reach across and give that cup of coffee. So they first put a tremendous amount of energy into training and customer experience, and then they brought technology in all around that engaging experience to bring people into their stores and bring people in and make the purchase experience even better, but not remove the customer service aspect of it. So from a payments and a place an order online and then show up and just deliver it, I think Starbucks has done a fantastic job of bringing technology in that without displacing the friendly face there to help deliver the product in the end.
Yeah, Jason, you made a great point, which is, in that case, focus on the, what's your purpose, the company purpose, what's your unique value proposition, and if it is around service, if you have this mantra that you're only going to provide the best service, right, then you can see how that could be expressed in various locations within the store, and then you can then layer on the technology to see how it can express that vision statement. But you need to have that vision first, and oftentimes, I talk to retailers all the time that have deployed technology, and they say it's not really working. But I think, again, my feedback would be that they've just simply deployed the technology for the technology's sake, not because they are doing the fist pound on the table saying, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, and this is how we're going to express it.
I couldn't agree more.
Great, guys. I think we have time for about one more question here. Jason, I think this is more of a technical question about Mozu, and the question is, are there any limitations on the number of content elements with Mozu? First of all, can you explain what a content element is, and then answer the question?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. So from a content standpoint, content takes many different forms, and it can be, it can be just text and verbiage. There might be copy that lights up a screen somewhere, be it in a website or an in-store experience. It can be digital assets, media, videos, imagery, other media formats, PDFs, informational slicks, etc. It can be more structured content as well, catalog content and catalog data, pricing information, specifications about products, what weight, size, color, material, etc. So content takes a lot of different forms. There really are no limitations on how many you can have in Mozu. It's, the platform, it really wants to get out of the way and empower retailers to provide as rich of an experience as possible. So a lot of energy has been put into making it easy to manage that content, manage the site experiences that might be derived from that content, preview, route for approval, et cetera. All of that management process around, there's been a lot of energy put into that, but there's not a real limitation in terms of the number that can be served out of the Mozu platform for a given tenant or sites.
Great. Well, it seems like there were a lot of the presentations had a lot of talk about the technology and the infrastructure and how to make this happen. I guess can you address a little bit about there's a question here about consolidating a content management system and migration. I mean, how much how much of the groundwork is there to make these transfers?
Yeah, I mean that's a key part. Once again, that whole aspect of it's not enough just to have strong technology. You have to have strong technology you can actually operationalize, get live, integrate into your environment, and run and maintain in a way that you can use it effectively. So the openness of the Mozu platform is really the key behind providing a platform that really does enable all those things and allow you to get live quickly, et cetera. So kind of the story is when we decided that we felt like that the market really needed a new kind of platform for these modern challenges, we built a commerce API and content API first, and then we turned around and built all the tooling on top of it for managing that content and conducting transactions and then serving that up in the different environments. So that high degree of openness means it's very easy to take existing systems and existing data and then bring it over and bring it in. And we have a host of partners that can help with that. It can be, an integration activity like that can be completely customer-led by the technology staff of a retailer. It can use our professional services team or another partner. There's lots of options for how to go facilitate that, but it needs to be consolidated so you can provide that unified view out to all of the associates and customers and everybody that needs to see it.
Okay. We only have a couple more minutes here, but I did want to note our attendee about the question at the tablets in the dressing rooms wrote in with more details. So I'm going to just read that off, and then maybe we can muddle through it a little bit more. She says, the iPads allow the customer to call an associate, check stock, connect to the .com site, and request the size. The associates are equipped with partner iPads, but we find the customers are getting redressed and engaging face-to-face, including asking for sizes. They seem to prefer the social interaction. I don't know, from my own personal shopping experience, I would stay in there because once I'm undressed, I'm staying until I got something that fits. So maybe it's just an adoption scale. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think some of the elements of accessing the website, I mean, they could do that on their phone, so I would expect those to be lower, not as adopted as requesting the help from an associate. I'm actually surprised that a customer would get dressed again. I think some best practices are giving them a response, making sure they know the associate's coming by, giving some sort of an understanding of how long the associate's going to take, right? Because maybe they push the button, and again, it's hard to do over chat. We don't know all the details, but if I'm in there and I push the button for help and I don't know when that help will come, I might just say it's easier for me to just leave the dressing room. But the other thing, too, is if there's someone in the dressing room, if there's someone who's close by, I sort of agree that pushing the button that says I need help is actually, really designed to, spark that interaction. It's not actually designed to keep the associate and the customer separate. It's actually designed to bring them together. So I think it's the devil's in the details, but I would explore modifying that specific function a little bit more. We've seen some success in other locations.
Great, wonderful. Well, that brings us right up to time here. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today and submitting such great questions. And I'd like to thank Adam and Jason for their insights. And that will conclude today's webinar. Thank you for attending.